Hello, I'm Laara Copley-Smith and I have Garry Ryan with me today and Fiona Adams, and we are having a conversation about men and emotional health today. Thank you both for being with me.
Thank you, Laara.
Pleasure.
And shall we let Garry lead the way, seeing as though you're the man in the room?
Not necessarily so. It would be interesting to hear the reflections of both of you on the experiences as a woman of men's lack or ability to be emotionally available, emotionally express. I'll tell you where I started though, many years ago when I went to my first relationships workshop, because I still laugh about this one. Very soon into it, I had to write down, I don't know, something. And I still remember writing about 3 dot points. My initial reaction was, what? You want me to what? Write about my emotions. 3 dot points, and I probably got 2 words in each dot point. I thought I was doing really well.
Do you know what? Can you remember what they were?
I realized, no, I don't, but I realized I was in trouble. I went, wow, I've got a long way to go.
But men are not taught or nurtured, are they, to be in touch with their emotions, or emotional health is not really a word that you hear very often. Although to me it connects to mental health to a degree.
I agree. Yeah, definitely connected.
And do you think...
I imagine that men are in touch with a few emotions, so like anger in general. I mean, you can't generalize every single man, but I imagine that, say, men are more in touch with anger, women may be more in touch with sadness, for example, or maybe it's more acceptable, so the man might be sad but turn it to anger. I don't know. What do you think, Garry?
I think that's very connected. Yeah, grief can definitely turn into anger very quickly. A lot of things can turn into anger very quickly. Just even the frustration of not being able to express oneself and speak and talk about what's actually happening can make a man angry. And yeah, I think that's a very connected thing. Not knowing how to express the feelings that are coming up, and they're all jumbled up and they don't even really feel like many feelings. It's more of a, yeah, I feel good, or I feel sad, or I'm pissed off.
I also imagine, I remember someone saying to me, she spent her whole life or years learning to actually see what each emotion was. So she'd look in the mirror and say, am I feeling sad? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling hungry? Am I feeling happy? Like, because of her childhood abuse, she actually couldn't even identify her emotions. And I imagine, not every single man, but I imagine there's a big percentage of men that, apart from, say, anger or a couple of emotions, they would probably have the same sort of issue. What do you think on that?
So like
definitely.
A misinterpretation of what they're actually feeling, thinking it's...
Well, maybe not even knowing what each emotion is, unless they've grown up in an emotionally healthy house where they've learnt all the different emotions. So, you know, this woman just didn't even know, am I happy, am I sad? You know, and I from what I've experienced, there's quite a few men that may be in a similar category.
Yes, and being, I know this afflicts men and women, but being numb, just numbing out to it. So I'll talk about, so my life was I realized I was numb. And I got to a point where I was doing some work and in a workshop, and I realized I was actually really numb. And the only way I knew that was because I started to feel the cold on my skin and realized how numb I'd been, and that was one of the ways I protected myself. I was also very angry, and I'm not just angry, but rage. There was a lot of rage simmering under there. And I was told, like, what are you angry about? And what do you mean? I'm not angry. But I was. But it was so normal to me to have this level of anger sitting with me. I didn't know the difference between anything, really. And I had to work into that. And it is and it would come up in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes it wouldn't take much to trigger it, particularly if I was drinking. It could be anything, just a word or a look. A lot of it turned out to be frustration at myself, angry at myself, what I did, what I didn't do, my own behavior, not achieving, was never good enough anyway. Even when I did achieve, I still couldn't see that I did. When I hit that level of the goal or the excellence or whatever it was, success, it still wasn't good enough because I was trying to prove something, and I really was trying to prove it to my father. Mostly, I was living up to these unknown expectations. I was and trying to prove something to someone else. And there was a lot of anger and frustration in there.
I think a lot of people try and prove to one of our parents, don't we? I mean, mine was to my father. Yeah. And he was angry. His main emotion that he expressed was always was covered with anger. Was your father? Did you have that emotional sort of transference from your father, as well as trying to be successful to prove to him?
Yes, I was trying to win his acceptance. I just wanted him to say, yes, well done. I'm proud of you. Essentially. Never got it. Ever. But we did, when he did pass, I'd done enough within myself, and I was okay with that. I'd sorted all that out because it wasn't even about him, really. It was all about me, accepting me. However, I had to go through all of that work around him, and I felt a jealousy about my relationship with my mum. And when there's a disengaged male, the father's disengaged, the partner's disengaged. If there are two boys, the mother will go to the second boy, and that will be the surrogate father, the surrogate partner. The first boy takes on a different role, and the second boy does that. And I've seen it, and I saw it even with my own sons, because I wasn't emotionally available to their mum. I was more emotionally available to my kids, but not to her. But I had trouble connecting to my second son because of that relationship that they had. It created this barrier that I didn't understand until many, many years later. And I will add that we've done we have both, because we desire it, done a lot of work and created a really healthy relationship. It's growing. And I can hear it in his voice now. It's so different. He's not angry at me. I had to have some really significant conversations with him and just put it on the line and say, mate, I'm sorry I was a shit father to you. I could not give you what you wanted. I didn't even know what you needed from me, and I couldn't do that. And I'm really sorry, and I was. You can't do that and be half-assed about it and pretend that you're sorry when you're not, because we all know when it's real or not, and particularly your children. And it was, it has changed our relationship significantly for the better. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a whole lot there that was necessary. And with my own parents, my dad, like, I got to understand what was going on for him. It doesn't excuse his behaviour. The guy was an arsehole. He was a drunk, and he didn't admit it, and he wouldn't admit it. It all changed for him later on in life when he was older and Mum passed away, and he was on his own, and there's a whole other story in that. But I got to be able to understand what was going on for him and his family dynamic and where that was coming from. So he was just projecting the conditioned behaviour and the abuse that he received. It felt primarily onto me and probably my sister. We all suffered.
Can I just
4 kids,
ask
we all
about?
suffered.
Can I ask about that, Garry? One of the things I've worked on over the years is the family shame, and I think a lot of people feel the shame, but they don't face it. Like, you might face anger or you might face sadness, but I think shame is one of the last things that, you know, people in family actually look at. Their own, well, not their own, but carried shame from one generation to another. Is that something that you see or you've experienced?
Yes. I actually feel that's more carried by the women. The shame. It's there. For me, it wasn't so much. It was like the family anger. And guilt around behaviour, hidden underneath all that anger. Guilt of, how much? I don't know. Where's the list end? You know, finding myself telling my children no and going, what? Why am I saying that? Oh, because that's what I heard in my head. Whether my parents said that, I don't know. It doesn't matter, because for me, it was, that's what I heard. I heard no all the time, and I was saying it to my own kids without any reason or rhyme, no reason whatsoever. And I one day I realized what I was doing. I went, wow, that's crazy. I'm just saying no for the sake of it. I actually have no reason. I have no reason to say no to them. I can have a conversation with them and go, what do you want to do, or whatever, you know. So it was a long period, years and years and years of pulling stuff apart and understanding that. Shame. I think I had my own shame and guilt around my behaviour with my kids that I had to deal with. Yeah, how I felt I was as a father. I don't know whether that was necessarily hereditary. I know my dad had a lot of guilt. I understand the dynamic of how it travels through the family bloodlines, through the water in our blood. That I understand how all that works and the energetic side of it. But I suppose, in clearing up my own guilt and shame, I definitely helped to move that out of the family. But yeah, I had to deal with that myself. I had to come to terms with my behaviour, man. And the biggest one was my learnt behaviour around a lot of stuff was to run away and not face it. And that was hard. I really had to own some ugly things all through my life around that. And it was uncontrollable until I actually realized what it was. And even then, it took me a while to really turn around and face it. And then talk to my kids about it.
Do you think that that's a man's trait, to run away from the emotions that are under the anger?
Yeah, I do. It's been described as going into the cave. It's the silence that happens. And I know many women talk about that, and many women have experienced that, where he won't even talk to me. It's just another version of running away, because it's so hard to face the shame and the guilt. We don't know what to do. We don't even understand it. So we just shut up. It's like, I suppose it's connected somewhere through, you know, the men that come back from war, the stories of the men that come back from World War II. They couldn't talk about it.
And do you think
it's the same?
There's an element of, for men, that if they go into their emotions, they're lose an element of their masculinity, or their, you know, their warrior aspect, because they're going into the emotional side?
I think we've been tricked into believing that, because I know that's not true. I know that's not true. I've proven that's not true from my own life. I know that's a lie, but that's what we've been taught.
I also wonder, and I know from the work I've done, is that it's tricky to, one, identify the emotions, two, face them, because you often don't know what to do with them. If you've done a fair bit of work, you might be able to face them or move them or shift them or, you know, work through them. But if you're someone that's done no work, it's like you've just got this overwhelming maybe anger or shame or sadness. And what do you do with it? Because it's all consuming. And I can imagine that unless a man has some tools and strategies, that of course you'd run away. And I'm sure a lot of women run away from their emotions in different ways, you know, medicate it or spew it out in tears or anger or rage, because they don't know how to deal with everything that's going on. So it takes a lot of skill from what I've seen.
The most important thing is that you have the desire to change, and then you have the willpower. This takes a massive amount of courage to face yourself, to really, to really look at the ugliness of who we are. This is not for the faint-hearted. That's in my opinion, it's why so many people don't go down this road. They get frightened of what they're going to meet. And you know who they're going to meet? They're going to meet themselves. There's so much talk about the shadow. Well, guess what? You're your own shadow. But if you don't face it, it will never, ever go away. Your life will never, ever change. And what are you teaching your children? And what are you teaching the people around you? And what are you teaching other people on how to treat you as a human being? Willpower. Huge amounts of willpower.
And there was a quote that we quoted earlier, wasn't there, Fiona? And it's, pain moves through families until someone is ready to feel it and heal it. So these things are passed on through that timeline until somebody decides that they are going to break those chains.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. one person primarily, what I'm seeing and what I have seen for a long time is one person in each family is doing the work. They've gone, I've had enough. And the kids that are following are getting all the benefits, which is rightly so. But all the healing's there for my siblings, for my parents, for everybody around me, if they choose to take it, because I'm doing the work, the same as both of you. It's there for them, but it's their choice whether they accept the what's happening for them, the possibility.
So I'm wondering if we leave it there for time, and perhaps we'll come back to this this discussion with maybe some tools for men and how they can, you know, if they decide that they want to go on that inner journey, perhaps Garry can share some key tools with us for men.
Yes, I can. Absolutely. I would love to do that because we need it. Certainly time.
It is time. Okay, thank you, both of you, and we'll speak again. Thank you, Garry. Thank you, Fiona.
My pleasure.